Now that a few more teams have been eliminated in the first round, just how far away from a respectable showing are the Nashville Predators? We're going to discuss that and whether we have a case of first round exit envy. Plus, we're going to break down the overtime shocker in Milwaukee. All of that on today's Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everyone. You made it through another week. Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off our Friday episode shouting out our Locked On Predators insiders and our everydayers who tune in to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. I am Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, I have a partner in crime.
That you do. I am Emma Lingan, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News. And I just learned this morning that I am celebrating 1 year at Locked On Predators today.
Yes.
Best year ever.
It has not felt at all like 84 years. Like this partnership has been so much fun. You all, the things we have said offline and unfortunately for some of you online, but what a year it's been, Emma. And we are still standing, as Elton John would say.
Yes.
Maybe not better than we've ever been, but we're still standing. We have a lot to talk about on this anniversary episode. Of course, the NHL playoffs have been cruel and kind to some different teams. Today, we're going to look at a couple of more teams that shook hands with some sadness, and we're going to ask ourselves what it would take for Nashville to get back to that once dreaded, but maybe potentially now longed for first round exit. We're also going to tell you, friends, oh my gosh, what happened with the Milwaukee Admirals last night on home ice. We're going to get you ready for game 2 of their series as well. Before we dive into all of this, we do want to let you know this episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. So, Emma, let's kick it off. We're going to get into some postseason discussion and some Nashville Predators discussion and some Milwaukee Admirals discussion. And then, friends, we got a game of takes from a hat, too. But did want to just bring everybody up to speed in case anyone missed it. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Sullivan is off the market. Mike Sullivan has been named the head coach of the New York Rangers. A little bit like we said, Emma. Kind of saw that one maybe coming.
Yeah, that was very much expected. A maybe potentially outside chance he could have been headed to Boston, but that would have been the only team other than New York that I would have expected. So he is, and if you think about it, Mike Sullivan is at the point in his career where he's, he wants to win. He's not in the business of trying to kind of start over and rebuild a team from scratch. And that's where Pittsburgh is right now. And so again, it's not that he's a bad coach. It's just like, that's not where he's at in his career right now. He wants to take a little bit more, of a ready roster, to contend roster. And, quite honestly, if we're just being real here, I think Nashville is a lot closer to where Pittsburgh is right now than they are to where New York is right now. So
I think
not entirely surprising, but now it's official.
It's official. And you had mentioned the word, you kind of got to read the landscape when we were talking about coaching earlier in the week. And I think you're really hitting on it. For one thing, you've got to look at what he left in Pittsburgh. And I agree with you. I think in a lot of ways, Nashville is in this weird situation. Barry Trotz has this kind of weird window going right now where, like, is this a team that's going to push to contend, and kind of bridge the gap with a contention type team to get to these younger players? Or is that window so small, you're not going to be able to thread that needle? And that is very similar to what Pittsburgh was in. And I think if he wanted to try to navigate that, he would have stayed in Pittsburgh with Crosby and those guys. Like, I don't think this was a parting of ways because he didn't like Pittsburgh, didn't like the players. And again, this is tough. There's a lot of openings right now for coaches. Nashville, just to refresh, not a place that has an opening for a head coach right now. And we're going to find out officially on Monday when we meet with Barry Trotz about the coaching situation. Speaking of which, just did want to mention this. Andrew Brunette has been named to the coaching staff for Team Canada for the IIHF Men's Worlds. He's going to be an assistant coach there. So we're going to get to see Andrew Brunette doing some coaching with that team in the offseason. And I believe, and I have not officially checked the roster, but I believe Ryan O'Reilly is going to be playing for Andrew Brunette at Worlds. How about that? How about that? So, yeah, just some coaching updates. I'm not going to lie. I really was intrigued by Mike Sullivan. That I see why it didn't happen. And we'll see what does happen on Monday. And of course, we're breaking all that down next week on Locked On Predators podcast when we get the official word of what's happening. Last night, Emma, what a night in the NHL, my friends. Ottawa eliminated. Minnesota eliminated. LA Kings eliminated. First round is shaken out. We have 2 more series that need to be settled. Did you see anything so far, Emma, in the first round in these teams, the eliminated teams, the teams moving on, that make you think, what, Nashville may be either closer to competing than we thought, than this anomaly, hopefully, of a year? Or do you feel like you watched this first round and thought, what, Nashville, they're just nowhere near it? As you watch these playoffs unfold, what's your gut feeling when you look at what we've seen in the first round and Nashville?
Gut feeling is that Nashville's pretty far away. I mean, it's hard not to, I'm not saying solely based on this anomaly of a season, but it is hard not to take that into account, at least somewhat. But, I think I look at a team like Winnipeg, for example, and they've got Connor Hellebuck, who's amazing in the regular season. And then he's not that great in the postseason. But then I look at, certain things like Nashville, UC Saros, obviously coming off of not his best regular season. But in the 2 playoff seasons playoff appearances that he has made, he's looked pretty good in the postseason. So I it's things like that where I'm like, okay, Saros is like he can help this team win in the playoffs, but the difference between the 2 teams overall is that when Hellebuck has a bad night or 2 bad nights, like they have the depth, they have the scoring depth to somewhat offset that, and Nashville doesn't have that. So it's like certain pieces I think are close for Nashville. Like I said, I think they have the goaltending for the playoffs. I genuinely do. I think that they have they have the scoring talent, but again, where was it this year? And then, but yeah, the defense is just not, it's just not there. Yeah, I don't know. It just, watching these games and thinking, this sounds so sad, but even I was watching the Ottawa-Toronto game last night, and it was, so Toronto was up 2-1, and then Ottawa tied it. David Perron tied it in the 3rd period with 10 minutes left. And I'm thinking, ooh, we got a game. And then Toronto went up 3-2. Of course, they did end up winning. But the point is here, when Toronto went up 3-2 with, I think, like 7 minutes left in the game, I found myself thinking, okay, if this was Nashville, I would have stopped watching. I'd be like, it's over. They're not coming back. But I was like, okay, Ottawa still has a chance at this. Of course, they didn't end up winning, but they put up a fight. And so that's just, kind of the difference I feel in just watching these teams and their ability to bounce back from from these, mistakes and things like that. So, not a perfect performance by Ottawa by any stretch, but just feeling
You
like
feel that difference.
you just feel it. Like, you just feel like they have what it takes, and they didn't get it done last night, but that's hockey. Like, it doesn't always happen. So, yeah, it was just kind of like that feeling of a difference that I was like, "Ooh, yeah," because I get so used to watching the Predators that if they go down by a goal with 7 minutes left, sounds like a lot of time, but for Nashville, I'm like,
Mm-mm.
it's over."
Not this season. As I've watched these teams, I've noticed a lot of the same things you have. You have teams that maybe, like I think of Minnesota, like Minnesota really had to work their way into the wild card spot. And a lot of that was injury related for Minnesota. But you knew that they had good goaltending in Philip Gustafson. They have a superstar offensively in Kirill Kaprizov. You knew they had Matt Boldy, who has decided that he's serious about this. Defensively, you felt like, okay, it's solid. It's very hard. You can look at on paper and say, you know what, Nashville has the components. Nashville has scoring talent, like you said, Philip Forsberg. They have Steven Stamkos. They've got Jonathan Marchessault. They have scoring talent. Defensively, they have Roman Yossi. But after this past season, it is very hard mentally to piece together what a playoff defense would look like for the Nashville Predators. Like I can't, I feel like I can't visualize it. They've got Brady Shea, and I think like we talked about earlier in the week, he's come around and struggled to start the season, but was really key kind of at the end of the season for this team. I still can't put together in my mind how the Nashville Predators can't be a playoff team, and yet I can't visualize it after the season we just saw. On paper, now they need to do some defensive sifting, and that's something we're going to talk a lot about this offseason. There's a lot of work to be done on the blue line because they're in a whole thing. There's a whole lot going on the blue line. But on paper, I feel like, well, I can sort of see how they could, but after this season, I don't feel like I can visualize it. It's been a rough season, you all, and there's going to be a lot that they are going to have to overcome this offseason, roster-wise, emotionally, to become a team that looks like a playoff team. Coming up, we are going to talk a little bit more about the postseason and the Nashville Predators. We're also going to say a fond farewell to one of the most beloved players in the NHL who is hanging up his skates after last night. And then, friends, oh, Lord, buckle up. We got to talk about what happened in Milwaukee. Did you know that your Fire TV also an Xbox? You can turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included. And friends, you are ready to go. You can dive into hundreds of premium titles, including EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty, just as easily as you stream your favorite shows. So how do you game when you're not in front of your main setup? Whether you are staying at a hotel or you're off on vacation this summer, or you just are even wanting to play in your bedroom, well, Fire TV Stick 4K makes it possible to keep playing from almost anywhere. To find out more, you can head to amazon.com/Fire TV locked on to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Emma, talking about the Nashville Predators, talking about the first round playoffs that, by the way, the Predators are not in. Just quick question, just a little gut question. Would you rather, especially after the season we've had, is it almost better that Nashville didn't make the postseason? Or do you think this fan base could tolerate another mushy middle first round exit? Or was it just better to crash and burn and not even get there? This is something I wrestled with last night watching the playoffs. I'm like, would I want to watch the playoffs and the Preds lose in the first round again?
Yeah, I mean, with where this fan base was at, I feel like it would feel like a crash and burn either way. Like losing in the
True.
first round again would
Mhm.
feel as bad as not making the playoffs for this team.
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, of course, there's some recency bias here with how the season did go, but just looking at Nashville this year and then looking at the playoffs and looking at the Central Division alone, like
Man.
looking at who Nashville would have to face likely if they were in the playoffs, I mean, that would have been tough. That would have been so tough.
Very
Now, except, Winnipeg apparently who can't win at Bridgestone Arena, but Nashville wouldn't have had a home ice advantage for that one. But
yeah.
could have made it interesting though. But yes, I think that just looking at the Central alone, and even if you look at, I mean, we've got, of course, Minnesota, as you said, has been eliminated. But they're a scary team. You've got Colorado and Dallas going to game 7.
Let's
Um,
go.
they're both scary teams. You've got Winnipeg is Winnipeg, and then you've got St. Louis, who is the hottest team for the second half of the season, and they're, putting up a fight against Winnipeg now. And I think even if you look around the rest of the division, I mean, that's basically the whole division, but like
Mhm.
they're all in the playoffs. And even the team who isn't, like Utah, I think they're going to be really good. I think
Yeah.
they are on the right trajectory. I think they need a little bit more veteran talent, which they can easily address in the offseason. But I think Utah is trending in the right direction. I think they're going to be a threat. Chicago, I mean, they'll,
Nowhere to go
probably
but
get,
up.
yeah, I mean, I just think that this division is,
Mhm.
you made the point earlier in the weekend when we were talking about coaching, and how no coach in their right mind, if Nashville did make a coaching change, no one in their right mind should expect him to come in and just rocket right to the top of the Central Division. Because if you look around, like, whew, I mean, and we're
So
seeing it in
good.
the playoffs. We're seeing it in the playoffs, but we're seeing it, like I said, even a team like Utah who didn't make the playoffs. Like, I think they're going to be dangerous next year. So, yeah, it makes me a little nervous for Nashville.
Yeah. I really sat there last night and waited out, and I thought, you know what? I just don't know if the fan base wants to watch a first round exit again. And you have to ask, can Barry Trotz put together a team that can do better than that next season? And that's something we're going to have to watch this offseason because it's going to be a challenge in this Central Division. It's going to be tough. The other thing that I just wanted to shout out, last night, Minnesota was eliminated. And that means that Marc-Andre Fleury is done playing hockey. And Emma, I was thinking about this and thinking about this, and I'm like, I don't know that there is a more beloved player across all fan bases. And I know that he's played in a lot of different, several different places, and so that helps. But Marc-Andre Fleury, what a freaking treasure he has been for the NHL. Like, I literally felt very Sarah McLachlan in the arms of the Angels last night when I realized that he was not gonna be back. Like, the NHL with Marc-Andre Fleury, friends, it just got a lot less fun.
There needs to be more people like him in hockey. I
Yes.
mean, I mean,
Oh.
he's going to be in the Hall of Fame as a goalie, but he's just a Hall of Fame human being as well. And I think, to your point, even rival fan bases for, teams that he's played for, no one hates the guy. No, you might
No,
not like love him, but everyone's like, yeah, he's fine. Like, I don't have an issue with him. Like,
you just
because
can't.
can't. It's impossible. He's such a I so quick story time for me.
Mhm.
He was, I mean, we all know this by now if you've watched the show. I grew up a Pittsburgh Penguins fan. I was raised in it.
We're gonna
So
love you through it.
yeah, Marc-Andre Fleury he was one of my first favorite players, like as a kid.
Yeah.
When I was in like middle school, I loved Marc-Andre Fleury. And I of course, now I've been in the industry long enough. I don't really get starstruck by anyone anymore. It's, kind of immune to it. But when I was working in Carolina, this was back in, would have been 2019-ish. Fleury was with Vegas at that point, and Vegas was playing in Carolina on a back-to-back. So because Fleury had started the game the night before, he was the backup for Vegas. And where I was doing photography for Carolina at the time, so I stood on the glass. And if you watch games in Carolina, they have a weird setup where their bench actually isn't big enough to hold the extra goalie. So he has to sit on like a little bar stool by himself over in the corner next to me. That's where I would be. And it's so funny because usually like the backup goalies who are usually the backup goalies, they're just used to that. They sit there and they don't talk. Like they're not rude, but they're just like they don't talk, they're not engaging, whatever. They just sit there and watch the game. But you could always tell when a usual starter was the backup for the night because they're over there like, "Hey, how's everyone doing? What do you do? What's your name?" And they're like they're just not used to being in that position. And so I was like, "Oh my gosh, Marc-Andre Fleury, Marc-Andre Fleury." Like I was definitely getting starstruck, and I was standing like right after the anthem, I was standing right next to the bar stool that the goalie sits on. And he came out and was about to sit down, and then he looked at me and goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, was this your seat?" Like he was totally serious. He was totally serious. I was
So great.
laughing. I was like, "Dude, no, that is
No.
your seat." Like even if it was my seat, you kick me out of it. Like it's
Yeah.
fine. And he was such a gem. Like the whole time he like chatted with me the whole time. I texted my mom during intermission because I had something. I knew it was still at my parents' house, but like back when Fleury had been with Pittsburgh, they had this promo in Pittsburgh with Giant Eagle where you could
Oh,
buy
yeah.
Flurry flakes. They're basically frosted flakes, but they were like branded with Flurry, and it was like a limited edition box. I still have the box. I'm looking at it right now, but at the time it was in my parents' house. And so I texted my mom. I was like, "Send me a picture of the Flurry Flakes box. I want to show it to him." And so at one point, like there was a stoppage of play, and I ended up just like I didn't say anything, and I just kind of took my phone and just like showed it to him. And he was like, "Oh, I remember that. That's so cool." And like I was like, "Oh my gosh, what is my life?" But
So
anyway,
great.
that was he's just a wonderful person and will be missed so much.
Oh. Just it changes the landscape of the NHL, like, such a void.
Yeah.
My son who loves hockey, he and I were chatting back and forth this morning about Marc-Andre Fleury and, like, "Oh my gosh, like, what is this even gonna be like without him?" And I said, "Here's the beautiful thing, is that we can tell our kids and our grandkids one day that we got to see Marc-Andre Fleury play hockey." And there's not a lot of hockey players, there's a lot of famous hockey players, a lot of Hall of Fame hockey players, but there is something extraordinary about who he is, and what he does for the sport that I think, you know what? I can't wait to tell my kids about the fact that like, "Hey, you know what? I got to see Marc-Andre Fleury play hockey." And, that's not every Hall of Famer that you say that about. So, shout out to Marc-Andre Fleury and your Flurry Flakes. Love Giant Eagle, by the way. When I lived in Pittsburgh, that's where I did all my grocery shopping. We used to call it Big Bird just for fun.
That's
Big Bird,
funny.
Giant Eagle. Yeah. Here are some things that are not fun, Emma. The Milwaukee Admirals kicked off their postseason. You know it has been 84 years in Nashville, and so pumped to watch this Milwaukee Admirals game. And it did not disappoint until it did. Here's what happened. First of all, you need to know very chippy game with the Rockford Ice Hogs, like very chippy game. It was a scoreless game after the first period. The second period kicked off, my friends. And who scores? Cal O'Reilly, wraparound goal, chef's kiss. And you think, oh, it was beautiful. But wait, there's more. 15 seconds later, a guy we all know and love, Fedor Svechkov, a little forehand, a little backhand in the slot that's not lava, scores in 15 seconds, less than a minute into the second period. Milwaukee is up 2-0. And we're like, yeah, you are. Here we go. Let's go. Giddy up. Yeah, okay. Third period. Milwaukee up 2-0. And then Rockford, they get on the board. Paul Ludwinski scores, pass from behind the net, right out front, scores. I'm like, okay, it's 2-1, but we're good. They put the extra attacker on with like 3.5 minutes left to go and tie up the game. You all, it's like I'm living the Nashville Predators season again. We go to overtime, and in the playoffs again, full intermission, 5-on-5 overtime, 12 freaking seconds into overtime. Colton Dock scores for Rockford to give them the 3-2 win and a 1-0 advantage in this series. Friends, not what I was hoping for. Here is what I will say. They go back at it for game 2 Saturday. It's a 6 p.m. puck drop. Remember, you can watch it on Flow Hockey, FLO hockey.com. Here's what I will say that you need to remember about this. And I had to remind myself of this because, friends, I am hockey sunburned from the Nashville Predators, is that Milwaukee last season came back in a 5-game series when they were down 2-0 to win the final 3 games and to win that series against the Texas Stars. The Milwaukee Admirals, this is a very resilient team that can come back. Just want to shout out Fedor Svechkov. You know, you mentioned yesterday, Emma, you want to see what his NHL time has done. Friends, you can see what his NHL time has done. Loved seeing Svech. Again, Cal O'Reilly. Great. It's tough to watch this. It was really tough, Emma, to watch this game after the Predators season. I'm not going to lie. I didn't want it to go like that, Emma.
Well, and there's the double whammy of the fact that you can't even get the, you know, the moral victory or the whatever, the silver lining, because there's no OT point in the playoffs. They don't get that 1 point. It's
no one
just
cares.
They lost.
It's an L.
It's an L.
So painful. Now, this is what I will say. Again, they're going to be back at it on Saturday night. I think, again, Milwaukee looks great. Just a couple of breakdowns, which we've seen in Nashville. A couple breakdowns can change a game. But I think Milwaukee has a lot more resiliency. I think they have playing with a lot more confidence. And so we'll look and see what happens game 2 Saturday night. That will be in Milwaukee and again on Flow Hockey. Coming up, friends, it is Friday. It is Fun Friday. Therefore, Emma and I, we're going to bust out a game of Takes from a Hat. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. The Stanley Cup playoffs are in full swing. And if you have never been to a live NHL playoff game, friends, you have got to go. It is unlike anything else. There is intensity, the speed, the energy in the building. It really is next level. And thanks to Game Time, getting in the door is easier and more affordable than ever. Game Time is the fastest way to grab playoff tickets, even for those must-see matchups. Prices actually drop as puck drop gets closer, and with last-minute deals, you can save up to 60%. Their all-in pricing is going to show you the total cost up front. There are no surprise fees at checkout. The app is even going to show you a panoramic seat view, so you're going to know exactly what you're getting before you buy. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Emma, one of the greatest things in your first year with Locked On Predators was the 10-gallon foam hat that we played Takes from a Hat with. But if you're new here, you need to know that my breakfast drink fell over and into the 10-gallon hat, and it is ruined. So today we are using our Craig Smith designed Nashville Predators hat. It's not quite the same, but I'm going to need y'all to bear with us. So I'm going to reach in here, Emma. We've got just a mishmash of who even knows what kind of questions. Okay, we've had some repeats of playoff matchups, Edmonton, LA Kings, Colorado, and Dallas, for example. Do you like building postseason rivalries with repeat matchups, or do you personally prefer to see different matchups each postseason?
That's a tough one. I'd say I see the Edmonton LA one is a little touchy for me because I genuinely thought this was gonna be the year that LA finally beat Edmonton. And that was like before the series even started. I was
Everyone
like,
did. Really?
so, and I before so I will say it's circumstantial because prior
Mhm.
to this year, I had grown tired of the Edmonton LA matchup because it's always LA or always Edmonton rather who wins it. And it's like, okay, can we get something new here? But this year I was actually excited for it. And yet the result ended up being the same.
Crazy.
Um, I will say like the Battle of Florida, that rivalry, I like more because I feel like every year, like those both of those teams are actually very competitive and you don't go into it knowing for sure this team's going to win, especially this year. I don't know what happened to Tampa
Ooh,
in the playoffs, but it was, those kinds of series that are always competitive and you don't always know what the result's going to be. I don't mind them. I think that
yeah.
they're fun. But and then others like Dallas, Colorado, for example, like
Who
that's a
knows?
good matchup. Who
That is
knows?
a good matchup. Yeah, I kind of like it, but I do like mixing it up a little bit. I will say that. I like mixing it up a little bit. I'm with you, like Edmonton, LA, meh. I think everybody, I mean, so many people I saw online had LA going all the way to the Stanley Cup final. So Edmonton has 9 lives, friends. They're like the cat of the NHL. They
Yeah.
just
I
they just don't go away. And like, their goaltending is not necessarily what you would look at and be like, "No, that's
They're
a
not
Stanley
good.
Cup caliber goaltending tandem," and yet
It's
they get
not
it
good.
done.
I mean, you've got teams like Washington who are very fortunate. They have 2 number 1 goalies. Edmonton doesn't even have 1 number 1 goalie. They've got 2
Yes.
number 2 goalies. And then again, like and they don't have Matthias Ekholm, but again, I understand you can't ever like it's never a wise move to bet against a team that has Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl on it. I
Very true.
understand that. But it's been getting guys back. They're like, "Oh, we're getting Evander Kane back for the playoffs." And everyone's like, "Okay." But then guys like
Didn't even notice he wasn't there.
right. I was like, "Oh yeah, he still exists." But then he ends up coming up big for them and I just
It's
this
crazy.
was the one year. Now I am like fully over that rivalry matchup because I'm
Yeah,
like, I was over it, and then I had a little bit of hope that we could get something different this year, and then LA crapped the bed again. So I'm like, okay, now I have no hope
now we're
anymore.
done. Now we're
Yeah.
done. Yeah, interesting. Oh, which Western Conference team do you think Nashville would have had a better chance against if, and I know this is a big if they had earned a wild card spot? Vegas or Dallas? And why?
Um,
It would have been a bloodbath. That's what we know in reality, but let's just pretend.
I was gonna say choice number 3, neither. um,
D, none of the above.
I'm gonna say Dallas only because I think there is something to be said for teams that when you already kind of have the book on a team, and
Mhm.
Nashville has obviously faced Dallas 4 times this year, lost 3 of them, but faced them 4 times this year, and they only faced Vegas 3 times. So I mean, I know that doesn't sound like that big of a difference, but I just
It
think that
is.
there's something to be said for having the book on someone. I think like and even individual players. I think it'll be very interesting, for example, now that we know that the next round in the East is going to be Florida and Toronto because Florida's got the book on Anthony Stolars because he was their goalie last year. So I think
Right.
that it does play a factor. It's not everything, but it does
Mhm.
play a factor. So I think that there's a little bit more familiarity there that I would say that Nashville might have a chance.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think they would have had a better chance against Dallas. Part of that for me is the way Dallas came into the postseason. And I will say this, I've been very impressed that Dallas has been able to regroup in the first round, especially against Colorado, because I think
Yeah.
Colorado has a lot going for it. So I, as kind of this is terrible, but like as kind of like sneaky fun as it was to watch Dallas crash and burn at the end of the regular season,
Yeah.
impressed with their ability to kind of regroup and compete. I mean, going to a game 7, I would not have thought that after the final game of Nashville season where they beat Dallas. I thought, Dallas, you are in a world of hurt against
Yeah.
Colorado, and they've done a good job kind of finding a way.
They
So,
have, and I will say, even without, they still don't have Heiskanen, they still don't have
mhm.
Robertson, but I will say, like, even like I knew they were getting Tyler Seguin back, and it was like, well, that's good. I mean, it can't hurt, but I was
Okay.
like, is he really gonna be? I mean, obviously, we know what he's capable of when he's at 100%, but as you and I both know, Anne, he is coming off a hip surgery that I'm like, is it
Oh,
really going
friends.
to be like, is he really going to be 100%, or is he going to be impactful enough to make a difference for this team when he's coming back from that injury? He hasn't played since December. Like, how is that going to go? And he's been a huge difference maker for them. So it's important. I think they have the good blend of veteran experience and youth. And
Yep.
yeah, I
It's
just,
been it's been so impressive.
yeah.
So impressive to me. I still want Colorado to win the series, but I've been very impressed with what Dallas has been able to do. All right, we have time for one more. Emma, do you want a sports one or a fun one?
Oh,
Your
I
pick.
want a fun one.
Fun one. All right. We will save the who my sports one. And this is one that my son and I have had big discussions about. I was going to ask you whose longevity is more impressive, LeBron or Ovechkin, but we'll save that for another day because the answer is clearly Ovechkin. Here's the fun one. If you had to pick a jersey number for your debut with the Nashville Predators, Emma, what number would you pick and why? I'm always
Oh.
fascinated by like what is the connection for these players and numbers? And sometimes the connection is nobody else had this jersey and I came in as a rookie, but sometimes they just have really interesting stories about why they picked the numbers they did. So what number would you pick and why?
Oh, that's a good one. I feel like I don't have like a good answer for that because I haven't really thought about this. Um, the last time I played team sports was middle school basketball and I wore number 15, so maybe number 15,
Yeah.
but oh, I don't know. I
I know.
might
It's a tough
go
one.
I might go 39
Okay.
because switching to a different sport, Minka Fitzpatrick wears number 39 for the Steelers, and we all
Let's
know the
go.
affinity that I have for Minka Fitzpatrick as the namesake of my dog slash roommate slash upper management here at Locked On Predators. So I might go 39 for Minka.
I love that. That's great. Yes. And we can never pay enough tribute to upper management on Locked On Predators. So I back that. I go back and forth on this one. My number always in sports growing up was number 10 because my cousin, Steve Bodemer, was the quarterback in his high school when I was younger, and we would go to his Friday night football games, and he was fantastic quarterback, and he wore number 10. So I always wore number 10 because of my cousin Steve. So probably number 10. The other option would be 35 for Pecorine. I may or may not have the number 35 tattooed on me. Listen, people, it's not weird. Let me explain why. Okay. Context matters. Emma mentioned hip surgeries. So I have had 3 different hip surgeries. I sustained a hip injury doing martial arts. And my hip surgeon that I went to is the same hip surgeon. And Emma knows this hip surgeon well because we pass along quality information about hip surgeons. It's the surgeon who did Pecorine's hip surgeries. And so I spent 3 years, 3 surgeries in 3 years, lots of physical therapy, months and months on crutches, staring at Pecorine's jersey, watching him play, thinking someday I will get back to like my peak mom, martial arts self, because he, was playing in the Stanley Cup Finals and being Pekka Rinne. So when I got done with my 3 surgeries, of course, I had one bigger scar that I wanted to cover up. So I got number 35 tattooed over my scar.
I love that. And see, now I am in physical therapy
Let's
at that same
go!
office. And now
Let's go!
I'm doing my little hip exercises looking at Pekka's jersey all the
Yes!
time. And yeah, Pekka himself actually, both Anne and Pekka himself referred me to this doctor.
Yes.
So I was like, okay, now I
The
have to go.
best. If you
But
all
yeah,
have a hip injury, reach out to Locked On Predators, and I'm not joking. We know literally the absolute best hip surgeon and staff.
and even if it's not surgical, they're the best.
Mhm.
And if you reach out to me, I will tell you who not to go see because
We
I
have a
saw
list of those too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Should have
You would not
listened to
believe it.
Anne and Pekka in the first place and just gone there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
now we know.
If you need hip surgery, you can go to our hip surgeon. You're going to see Pekka's autographed jersey. And if you go in exam room 6, friends, you will see when I finally wrapped up all of my stuff. I autographed one of my black belts and put my state championship. I gave them my state championship plaque. So in exam room 6, you will see Anne's black belt and my state championship plaque, which is not nearly as impressive, FYI, as Pekka Rinne's jersey.
I still haven't seen it. Every time I've been there, they put me in room 5. I'm like, dang
you
it.
got to add. Yeah, be like, no, I want to go in 6. It's right there on the if you go in 6, it's on the shelf closest to the window. So, a little something to know. Anyway, for all of your hip needs, reach out to Locked On Predators. For all of your Nashville Predators news, reach out to Locked On Predators, because next week, oh my goodness, we are going to have a lot to talk about, friends. You're going to want to be here on Monday at 12:15. Emma and I will be part of the media meeting with Barry Trotz. We're going to hear about the off-season plans. We're going to hear his thoughts on the previous season. My guess is we're going to hear the official word on coaching, which, by the way, Nashville Predators have a head coach. I imagine they're probably going to still have a head coach after 12:15, but we're going to break down everything we hear from Barry Trotz on Monday. Also on Monday, the draft lottery. Where will Nashville pick in the top 5 this season? We're going to let you know Monday. So next week, we are going to have draft coverage. We're going to have Barry Trotz coverage. We're going to have coaching discussions. So make sure you tune back in here. Emma, before we log off for the weekend and catch our breath and rest our hips, let everyone know where they can find you and your work.
You can find me doing my band exercises to strengthen my hip, my broken hip, which is now healed, but still getting stronger. And you can find me on social media at Emma_Lingan. You can find my work at the Hockey News, including nightly live playoff coverage. I have hosting duties tonight. We will be covering the Winnipeg St. Louis game. So tune in for some live coverage there.
Love that. You can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio. We'll, of course, have updates on the Milwaukee game Saturday night. Puck drop 6 p.m. at Penalty Box Radio on social media as well. Friends, that is going to do it for another week here at Locked On Predators. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. Have a great weekend. We will be back here Monday with all kinds of news and notes. We'll see you then.